Welcome once again to Phoenix EduWeb. So today we are going to start another new chapter, that is tissues. So we had already studied about the cell. जब हम एक सिंगल सेल की बात कर रहे हैं, when we talk about the unicellular organism, we know that a single cell is capable of doing all the activities like respiration, food intake, movement, digestion. Okay, but when we talk about the multicellular organisms, it means that they have more cells. Okay, and we had talked about the division of labors in multicellular organisms. Okay, so what does it mean? That they have the specific cells, okay, which are helping in performing different functions. Now when these cells they group together to perform a particular function, we termed it as a tissue. So what is the tissue? They are the group of the cell which come together for this specific function. For example, we have the cardiac tissue, we have the nervous tissue, blood is also a tissue, we have different tissues which is present in the intestine which helps in absorption. So basically जब हम बात कर रहे हैं that a cell which have grouped together, यहाँ पे ज़रूरी नहीं है that every time there should be a particular type of the cell. There could be different types of cell which come together and form a particular tissue which helps in performing a similar function. First we will understand that how cells are specialized to perform the specific function. If I talk about the cell of the plants, okay, so plants, they have different types of the cell. Let's say they have the root cells, some cells which are present in the leaf. Now if I see the difference between these two, root cells, they are present underground, so definitely they does not have chlorophyll. What will be the other specification in the root cells? The other specification in the root cell will be that they are going to be the thin-walled cell because they have to absorb water. Okay, plus as they have to absorb the more water, their vacuoles are very large. Their vacuoles are very large. So this is the one of the example which I was telling, that the particular cells sometimes they are specialized to perform a functions for a particular function. So if we are saying about the root cells has the function of absorbing the water. They are present the underground, so they does not require the function of chlorophyll, so they don't have chloroplast in them. Okay, the next function for the root cell is absorbing the water. For absorption of the water, the wall should be thin. ओके जितनी थिन वॉल्ड होगी उतना जल्दी एब्जॉर्प्शन ऑफ वाटर होगा. सेकेंड, दे हैव द लार्ज vacuoles. This is the example of how the some cells are specialized. If there is a leaf cell, definitely leaf cells, they perform photosynthesis, they will contain chloroplast, but in root cells you will not find the chloroplast. Okay, so cells are specialized according to their functions. If we say that blood. Whenever we are talking about the tissue and we are saying this, that the group of the cell which come together to perform this specific function, but it's not always that always the cells are should be the same. If we talk about the blood, we have the different cell which is present in the blood. Let's say WBC, RBC, platelets. Okay, so these are the some different cells which are present in the blood, but the function of the blood is the transportation. It helps in the transportation of nutrients, removal of waste material, and exchange of and transport of respiratory gases. So here the main function of blood is transportation, in which RBC is going to help in the function of transportation of respiratory gases. If it is plasma, then it is going to help in the transportation of nutrients. Okay, if we talk about the xylem, so xylem is the another tissue which is present in the plants. It is also termed as the conducting tissue. It is also termed as the conducting tissue, in which we can see the different types of cells. Like xylem parenchyma, xylem vessels, trachea. So these are the different types of the cell which we can see in the xylem. In xylem also we can see that all the cells which are present in the xylem with the component of xylem are dead except one, that is xylem parenchyma. So if we see here the difference of the specialization of the cell, the difference of the cell which are present, but here the function is same. As in xylem parenchyma, there is one difference, that it's not always that all the cell will be living in the tissue. Xylem is one of the example of the tissue where we find the dead cells also, and which helps in the formation of the tissue, जिसका काम है conducting of water, transportation of water. So a group of cells which work together for a common function is called tissue, and the tissue has been discovered by the Marie-François Xavier B. Chat. He was also termed as father of histology. If we understand that what is the histology, histology means the study of tissue. हिस्टोलॉजी का मतलब है द स्टडी ऑफ tissue. Okay, so now I think you got it that what is the tissue. They are the group of the cell which work together for the common function is called tissue. Here some cells are specialized, which I gave the example of root cells. They are specialized for absorption of water. It's not always that if it is a tissue then all the cells should be same. There could be a different types of cell which come together to perform a single function. The example is blood and xylem. Blood, it is the animal tissue. It is a type of a connective tissue in which we can find a different types of a cell which combine together to help in transportation of various materials. In xylem main function is transportation of water. In xylem we can see the different types of cell, in which the difference is in xylem there is only one living cell, that is xylem parenchyma, and others are non-living. So now the types of plant tissue. Let's study about the types of plant tissue. Here plant tissue can be divided into meristematic tissues, and permanent tissues. Meristematic tissues once again divided into apical meristem, intercalary meristem and lateral meristem. Here permanent tissues can be divided into simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. In simple permanent tissue, once again we can see the differentiation, that is parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. In complex tissue there are two different types of tissue, that is xylem and phloem. So this is the chart. Here we can differentiate the different types of plant tissue, the different types of plant tissue which is divided into meristematic tissue and permanent tissue. Meristematic tissues which is once again divided into apical meristem, intercalary and lateral meristem. Here permanent tissue which can be further divided into simple and complex. In simple, once again we can see the differentiation, that is parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma, and in complex tissue we can see the xylem and phloem. Let's start with the meristematic tissue. Now meristematic tissue is known as growing tissues. Its cells are continuously dividing, which can be further go for the differentiation. So you can see here the continuous cell division which leads to the growth of the particular area. Undifferentiated cells, these cells are new and capable for further division. They show rapid growth which helps in the growth of overall structure of the plant. Meristematic tissues are differentiated into two different types. If on the basis of the origin, if I'll say on the basis of the origin, there are primary meristematic tissue, there are primary meristematic tissue and secondary meristematic tissue. On the basis of their origin, we can differentiate meristematic into two different types, that is primary and secondary. If we talk about the location of the tissue, then we can see three different types, that is apical meristem, intercalary meristem and lateral meristem. Let's see these tissues. So here it is the apical meristem, this is intercalary meristem and this is lateral meristem. If we talk about the apical meristem, so these are present in the shoot tips and root tips, which is responsible for the growth of this particular area. If we see about the intercalary meristem, they are present in the leaf and internode region. Once again, this is responsible for the growth of this area. This is responsible for the growth and increasing length. If we talk about the lateral meristem, so you can see that lateral meristem are present here. This lateral meristem is responsible for the increase in girth, or it helps growing stem wider. So there are three different types of meristem based on their location, that is apical meristem, intercalary meristem, lateral meristem. Now if we come on the topic of permanent tissue, so we had studied about the permanent tissue. There are two different types. They are simple and complex. So what is the difference between simple and complex? Whenever the tissues are made up of single kind of the cell, single type of the cell, they are termed as simple permanent tissue. And if the tissues, the permanent tissue which have different types of cell, they are termed as complex permanent tissue. And how this permanent tissue is originated? So when meristematic cell or tissues lose the capability of dividing, they form the permanent tissue. So at one stage, meristematic tissues, they lose the capability of dividing and they differentiate in the different types of tissue which is responsible for the different functions. Such type of tissues are known as permanent tissue. In permanent tissue, let's talk about the simple permanent tissue. In simple permanent tissue, there are three different types of tissues, that is parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. Let's study about the parenchyma tissue. In parenchyma, they are present abundant in plant. This type of tissue is mostly found in each and every area of the plant. They are also known as universal tissue of plant. They are also known as universal tissues in plant. Basically, their function is storage they are thin walled, made up of cellulose, and they have intercellular spaces. They have intercellular spaces. So if we talk about the parenchyma, it is a simple permanent tissue. It is the tissue which is present abundantly in the plant. It is also known as the universal tissues of the plant. You can see here that it is having the intercellular spaces between them. Also, their function is for the storage. They have the vacuoles present in it. They are thin wall made up of cellulose. Now, according to the function, if parenchyma has some different type of function, let's say parenchyma, it is present in the leaf, which is doing the function of photosynthesis. So definitely chlorophyll will be present in that. Okay, so those parenchyma which is performing the photosynthesis, which contain the chlorophyll, such type of parenchyma is known as chlorenchyma. This is parenchyma. They have vacuoles, dense cytoplasm, they have intercellular spaces. If the parenchyma is performing the function of photosynthesis, which is containing the chlorophyll, so that kind of parenchyma is termed as chlorenchyma. If you see the aquatic plants, so they are in water. Okay, so they need to float. Okay, they should have the buoyancy. So in such type of plants, in such type of aquatic plants, the parenchyma has been functioned in which there are air spaces between them, or you can say that they contain the air cavities, which helps in the buoyancy. Okay, so first, simple permanent tissue, that is parenchyma. What are the characteristics of parenchyma? कैसी होती है parenchyma? Okay, so उनके बीच में intercellular spaces होता है. उनका function क्या है? उनका function है storage of food. Some parenchyma, if they have different function, उसके हिसाब से उनका नाम भी change है. If the parenchyma performing the function of photosynthesis, which is containing the chlorophyll, so we will term it as chlorenchyma. If the parenchyma, they are present in hydrophytes. Hydrophytes मतलब the aquatic plants. So they need the buoyancy force. If that particular function is done by the parenchyma, they have the air cavities, then they are termed as aerenchyma. Next is collenchyma. Next tissue is collenchyma. So here, what is the difference between the previous one and this one? That first of all, these could be found below the leaf epidermis. Intercellular spaces are less. They have very less intercellular space. They have very less intercellular space. There is presence of pectin in the corners of the area. There the walls are thickened with the pectin. Now What is the function of collenchyma tissue? So its function is giving mechanical support, that is, it increases the tensile strength and elasticity. You can find this kind of tissues in tendrils, weak stems, climbers. So the functions of elasticity able climbers and tendrils to bend and helps in increase of flexibility. Okay, so collenchyma, they have very less intercellular spaces. The thickening which we can find, that is of pectin. What is the function of this cell? The function is that they increases the tensile strength. उनकी जो elasticity होती है, जो flexibility होती है, वो increase हो जाती है, and they have very less cellular intercellular spaces. Last is sclerenchyma. Here we can see the thickening, lignified thickening, they have no cellular spaces, and they help in they provide mechanical support to the plant tissues. Okay, you can see that there is no intercellular spaces between them. The thickening of the cell wall is made up of lignified. They have no cellular space and they provide the mechanical support to the plant tissues. So this was the simple permanent tissues. Simple permanent tissues, that is, simple permanent tissues में क्या होगा कि जो भी cells हैं, they are of one kind. In simple permanent tissue we have see three different types, that is parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. Parenchyma once again divided into erenchyma and chlorenchyma depending on their functions. Chlorenchyma function is photosynthesis and erenchyma providing the air cavities. So collenchyma, it is main function is providing the tensile strength, give flexibility, and last, that is sclerenchyma, they have no cellular spaces between them, they give mechanical support, they provide mechanical support. Let's come for the complex permanent tissue. Here I have written the xylem and phloem, and the main difference between simple and complex was that in simple we can find only single type of cell, in complex we can see the different types of cell which come together for common function. So if we say about the xylem, okay, so xylem main function is transport of water. Root absorb the water and xylem vessels and different types of cell which is present in the xylem helps in transportation of the water. Let's see which different types of cells are present. So one is tracheids, then we have vessel element, this is the vessel elements and these are the tracheids, and also we have the xylem parenchyma. Here xylem vessels, tracheids, and xylem parenchyma. So here all three are dead, only xylem parenchyma is living. In all four different types of element of xylem, only xylem parenchyma is living, other elements are dead. Let's see their functions. So these are the components of xylem. Xylem fibers, they have lignified walls. They have dignified walls, helps in transportation of water and provide mechanical support. Xylem parenchyma is only living cells. In xylem, it function the storage. We had already studied in the parenchyma that parenchyma has also one function, that is storage. So if we talk about the xylem parenchyma, what kind of storage it will do? It will do the storage of starch and fats. Then come the vessels or trachea, which is composed of the short tube like cells. They are perforated because water, we have to transport the water is getting absorbed, so they have to be perforated. Next is tracheids. So tracheids are the xylem cells observed in vascular plants. They are the cells which are taper at the end. It is said to be the plant's conductive element. It appears to be thin, long and tapering ends. The cell wall of tracheids are lignified and contain pits. They are lignified, that is why they are dead. The tracheids are involved in transportation of inorganic salt and water. It also offers structural support to the plant, and the presence of pits in the cell wall allow the flow of water between the cell. Now coming to the phloem. Phloem, it helps in the transportation of food. It helps in the transportation of food. In which form the phloem transport the food? So in the form of sucrose. It also utilizes the ATP. It also utilizes the ATP. So the phloem is composed of three different types of cell, that is conducting cell, parenchyma cell and the supportive cells. We can see here it is the sieve plate, here it is the sieve tubes, this is phloem parenchyma, and these are the companion cell. They are adjacent companion cell. They help in the transportation of sucrose by utilizing the ATP. Let's see, the conducting cells, also called sieve elements, are composed of columns of sieve tube cells that have perforations in lateral. You can see the perforations over here through their lateral walls, and that helps in the conduction of food throughout the plant. The companion cells, as the name suggests, are the companion of sieve tube cells, help carrying out the metabolic functioning of the sieve elements. Phloem fibers are only dead cells which are also called as bast. So here the difference between the xylem and phloem. First, xylem वो क्या कर रहा है, that is conducting water. Phloem क्या कर रहा है, it is going to transport the food. Transportation of food in phloem, it is also known as translocation. Transportation of food in phloem, it is also known as translocation. We can see that if this is the tree and water is getting roots and going through xylem to all the way, but when food is getting translocated from leaf to different areas, okay, so it has to be two-way. It will go up also and it is going to be downwards also towards the root, because they need energy. Roots need energy to perform their metabolic activities. Okay, so अगर हम xylem की बात करें तो xylem का जो conduction है that is one way, phloem का जो conduction है that is in both the direction. Another difference is that phloem में all the elements are leaving except phloem fibers. Xylem में all the elements are dead except xylem parenchyma. So these are the some differences between xylem and phloem. There is one more type of tissues that are known as secretory tissues, जिसमें आता है lenticephorous tissue and glandular tissue. In lenticephorous tissue, this tissue generate the latex. You know that the latex kind of substance which is coming out of the plant. So कहाँ से आता है? That is come from the lenticephorous tissue. Glandular tissue, they are responsible for the secretion of the gum and resins. So this is the third type of tissue in the plant. We just seen that they are secretory tissues. They are the example of secretory tissues is lenticephorous tissues and glandular tissue. So we had completed the plant tissues, जिसमें हमने देखा meristematic tissues, which is responsible for the growth. They perform the rapid growth, continuous cell divisions, and they show the different types of meristematic tissue based on their origin, primary and secondary, based on their location. 3 apical, intercalary, apical, intercalary and lateral. Second, we have seen the permanent tissue in which simple and complex. In simple, we have seen the parenchyma. They have the intercellular spaces. Their function is the storage of food. They are thin wall made up of cellulose, and they have the vacuoles or small vacuoles. According to their function, parenchyma once again can be further differentiated into chlorenchyma and erenchyma. Chlorenchyma, they are performing the function of photosynthesis. Erenchyma, they are helping the hydrophytes for the floating because of the air cavities. Second, collenchyma, very little intercellular spaces, help provide the flexibility and elasticity. And last, sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma has two different So it also gives the mechanical support, complex tissues, xylem and phloem. Xylem helps in conduction of water and phloem helps in conduction of food. So in next lecture we will continue with animal tissue. Thank you.